Hi guys, so welcome. We are going to paint a spring bird with watercolor, a bluebird, on some forsythia branches. So this is great, fresh, springy subject matter, even though a lot of us are stuck inside right now. So you're going to need a size 10 round brush, 3 colors of paint, blue, red, and yellow, and some water, of course. And we're going to start by mixing a lighter blue color. So for this, I'm using the blue right out of my pan. I'm going to mix a lighter blue color, and then I'm going to mix a darker blue color. And I'm going to darken the top blue color there on my palette with a little bit of the red to give it a bit of a purplish tint. Now with the darker blue color, I'm going to start by making the head of the bird. We're sort of going to put the bird in the middle of the paper. So I make the head of my bird with just a small brush stroke there. That's the top of his head, and his beak is going to be pointing to the left. With my lighter blue color, I am going to paint the feathers of his top wing. He's in flight right now, so I'm using 5 strokes for 5 feathers for this top wing, and it's going to be lighter in color than the bottom wing, which we're going to paint with our darker blue color. So this bottom wing is going to be angled downwards, and my hand is going to kind of obscure the picture for a second, but you can see the position that I put it in to get this stroke on the bird. So this is his bottom wing, and again I'm going to do 5 feathers. Might need to mix a little bit more of your darker blue. Alright, so we're finishing up this bottom wing here, and then I'm going to add even more of the red to my blue to get a more violet tone, and I'm going to use that to paint his tail feathers. Still predominantly blue, but more to the violet end of the blue spectrum. So there's his tail feathers, and we're going to use a wet and wet technique to paint his little belly, his cute little orangey red belly. So with plain water, I'm going to wet the profile of his belly and mix up an orangey red color here, and I'm just going to drop it into the wet water on his belly. And here's that great watercolor effect that just sort of spreads as it dries. So now we're going to mix a neutral color using all 3 primaries. This is how you mix a neutral brown, black, gray. It varies depending on the proportion of the different primaries that you use, but I'm going for a brown here. So I'm going to use it for his beak, and I touch a little bit of it into his belly, and I like that little spread there. So with the same brown, now I'm going to add the forsythia branches. And for branches, you want to make sure that you're using fast strokes. It gives you that nice tapered end as you move the brush faster. So I kind of make my branches in sections so that my strokes are easy to control, and try to give a little asymmetry here in the composition. You know, you don't want your branch to look symmetrical. That's not realistic. So after I get my branches in, I can always add more branches later, and I probably will for a little detail. but I'm going to start with some peachy red flowers, just some dabs, some little stamps of my brush in the petal arrangement all over the page. And they don't have to be, you don't have to get literal about it and hook them up to a branch. That's something that you can add later, also something that your eye will fill in naturally. Now I'm going to mix more of a yellowy orange color here. I'm saving my pure yellow for the end because that's really going to give the feeling of the forsythia. So painting the flowers on the branches like this is a great exercise in balance. This is pretty intuitive. You can see just by looking at the picture where you need more of a certain color. And so that's really what we're doing here. We're kind of spreading these flowers and colors out over the whole picture so that when you look at it, it feels balanced to your eye. So I continue to do some of these warm orange yellows, and I'm going to get some brighter yellows as we go here. And you can liven up your flowers. You can add maybe a few darker ones here and there if you'd like. I'm keeping this pretty pastel and light. So I'm going to mix up a neutral, a brown again, with my 3 primaries, and I'm going to make some stems connecting a few of these flowers. I'm going to paint the bird's eye, just a little eye right under his blue cap. And I feel like it needs some darker flowers to make it pop and to tie in his red belly a little bit more. So I'm going to add some darker, maybe brighter is a better word, some brighter red flowers around for a little variety. Alright, so I'm mixing my neutral again, and I'm going to put tiny little stems. So I'm using the very tip of my brush for this. Very tip of my brush. Some get stems, some get little dots. Trying to move my brush quickly so that I get a thin line that sort of tapers at the end. So I'm trying to give the illusion of little sticks. You know how on forsythia there are all these little like woody stick parts. So that's what I'm attempting here. And I'm going to add just a few more little sticks down at the bottom of the branch. And really, I think I could stop here. But I'm going to add a few more details, although I really like how the branch looks right now. I'm going to try adding some darker darks in just a few places for some detail. And also pump up that color on the bird's belly towards the end. So I'm going to put a little bit more of the darker blue on the tail feathers. Give them a little more interest. Okay, and now I've decided that even though I like these branches, I want more of that forsythia yellow, so I'm going to add even more flowers just sort of scattered randomly in the empty spaces. And I'm varying my strokes a little bit, some smaller ones. in more of a bright yellow. Here I'm really using the true forsythia yellow. And some smaller strokes, dabbing them around. All right, I had to take a little break, and I decided that I needed a really dark color here. So I grabbed my Prussian blue, which is like a really dark blue, to help me to get to those dark darks that will make my picture pop. So I'm going to mix up a really dark neutral using my Prussian blue and the red and just a little bit of the yellow, and I'm going to darken his eye. I'm going to put some little markings on his tail feathers, just some little dabs here and there on his feathers, to give some variation. And then with a larger stroke, I'm going to darken the feathers on his wings. And I'm trying to not cover the entirety of that blue underneath so that it peeks through just a little bit. And then he's going to get a few little head feathers too, because I like that on my birds. All right, now I'm going to mix up an even darker neutral brown, and I'm going to try to make these forsythia branches pop just a little bit more. All the colors are kind of blending together for me, so I'm going to use this darker brown to add some more woody forsythia sticks on the branches, connecting some of the tiny little flowers that I added. Just give more of that natural feeling to these branches and add a little bit more interest. So with this darker color, I'm continuing to sort of fuss with these branches. It's not quite how I want it to look yet, so I just keep trying, and often that's what happens with a painting is you start heading in one direction and something doesn't go as planned, and so you have to change your approach a little bit, and that's just something that you learn as you practice and try things and try to fix things so that you come up with something that you really like. So I'm just continuing to add these little details on the branches. I really want to give them more of this sticky feeling, because that's really how forsythia is. There's really not much green, it's just sticks and these pretty bright yellow flowers. So occasionally I have to mix up my color again, my neutral color, and it's sometimes I can't get it to match exactly, and that's fine because your eye makes it appear close enough to what you were using before, and the slight variation can give it a little more interest. All right, so I'm pretty happy with that now, and I think the last thing I'm going to do is add a deeper red to my bird's belly, and then I will be satisfied. Thank you so much for joining me. Let's go live to paint another day.